Oh, wrong hand. But no, that's not working. All right. Hello, and welcome everybody to this fantastic dinosaur action, dinosaur talk. Yes, all about Stampede, dinosaurs in Pioneer or Explorer. A little bit later than I wanted to, but I'll go over the base of everything, the early turns, how you start, and as people join, if any of you are still awake, whoever's watching now or later, whenever it is, ask your questions, leave a comment. If you are watching later, of course, I'm always around to answer anything. Discord, of course, and yeah, we'll get right into it. Longer than I wanted just because, or later than I wanted just because doing a lot of laundry. You can imagine any of you with kids, or even if you don't have kids, they want to go in the big bed, the bed that you sleep in, have some quiet time, and you leave them alone for a bit, and potentially accidents can happen, and that's partly what happened. And you got to wash a lot, and it takes multiple loads, and yeah, long time to dry too. Comforters take a long time, my goodness. It's probably an hour and a half in the dryer, but that's not what we're at right here. Got to resize myself as well. Oh, strap yourselves in. This is going to be a good one. Oh my God. I was meaning to pre-record this at some point, but I thought, tonight we'll just get right into it. Why am I choosing to do this? If you are new, I play dinosaurs all the time. Literally, it is all I play. Every day, grinding the ladder on Arena, playing a little bit of Magic the Gathering online. The odd time I play Brawl or Commander, but ranked best of 3 is basically my favorite. Okay, Stampede dinosaurs, there are multiple variations, but my favorite, going off the namesake, the thumbnail sake, Ghalta Stampede Tyrant from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. 5 and 3 green for a 12/12 tramp. When it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. You don't have to put everything. Depending what you have, you might not want to put duplicate legendary creatures, or you could just to get multiple triggers from Vaultborn Tyrant, but we'll get into all that stuff. Absolutely. The main idea is you get to Ghalta Stampede Tyrant, you get to 8 mana in as stable a way as possible ahead of the curve. You could get this turn 4, possibly. You could even get it turn 3 or turn 2 if you go the devotion route with Leyline of the Guild Pact. But that is, it's a little bit different than this. Slightly. However, how do you get to 8? How do you get to that big mana for all these big creatures? It's not overkill, which will also get into that point as well. Sunken Citadel. Many of you know this, but if you're new, again, Sunken Citadel, when it enters, you choose a color. As it enters, it taps for a mana of the chosen color. That is going to be very important, but it can tap for 2 mana of the chosen color for lands with activated abilities. That's what we want, because that 2 mana, usually the first Sunken is chosen as green, so it adds 2 green for Castle Garenbrig. Its activated ability to tap and make 6 green. So if you have 2 Sunken Citadels, maybe you chose both as green. You have 4 mana from 2 lands with the 2 Sunkens. Keep that in mind. Castle Garenbrig, that 4 mana from 2 Sunkens goes into this to tap to make 6. 3 lands in total, 6 green for creatures. Pretty much everything is green, mostly. Of course, you do see Palani's Hatcher and Regisaur Alpha requiring red. That's not a big hoop to jump through. I don't often play them straight up for 5 mana, but that is the base of it. You sprinkle in other lands, a little bit of cost reduction, a sprinkling of ramp, which you'll see right here with Paradise Druid. But that's the base, the core, the efficient base, and hard to interact with. Oh, you can't counter a land. Chances are the opponent can't destroy a land. Do you have Fatal Push, Fiery Impulse, get lost? The opponent's chances may just be getting lost because they may just die. they have all that classic removal that would probably slow you down. You're playing those early creatures that can be interacted with. You know, you're hoping they survive. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This, boom, you just get there. Pretty much all the time, most of the time. More often than not, the opponent is just left waiting, helpless. They may not know what you're doing in game one, and you can surprise the opponent because it isn't a very common deck. And boom, once you take them down game one, they're left scrambling, wondering, what the heck can they bring in? They might have nothing, no chance. Lots of removal and answers, and it doesn't matter because when you do your thing, Ghalta putting everything out, chances are it doesn't matter how much single target removal they have, they are still going to die that turn, oftentimes. With Regisaur and Palani's Hatcher, giving other dinosaurs you control haste. That's very important because pretty much every creature in this deck is a dinosaur. So it maximizes the potential of when you do the thing, boom, you get to kill the opponent. Deadly. It doesn't matter if they have 40 life, 50 life, sometimes the turns are so incredibly big, damaging. I've done a lot, but even if the opponent is at 20 life, doesn't matter. Chances are when you do it, boom, they're dead. You don't have to chip away. Oh man. Lovely stuff. But the backup plan, we'll get into the start in a second. You might think, oh, this is all the deck is. This is how the deck wins. If you don't get Ghalta, it's not much of a deck. It's all it hinges on. No, this is just the best thing that you can do. The namesake. It's a pretty good backup when, you know, you're playing Carnage Tyrant on turn 4. You're setting up, you're ramping in a stable way. Oh, that removal is just sitting in the opponent's hand, and then boom, Carnage Tyrant drops turn 4, and things are getting serious. There was nothing to kill before this dropped, and now they can't kill this. Sunken Citadel, tapping for 2 green, and let's say 2 forests. So that's 3 lands. Plus Castle Garenbrig, 4 lands on turn 4. You make 6. It's not the fastest potential explosive start. Of course, there could be different ramping, the mana dorks and whatnot, but like I said, that stuff dies pretty often. And now this way, you get there a couple turns ahead, and when you drop this, or something else for 6, there are quite a few options, and it can be nice to elevate the number of things for 6. When you reach that critical mass, that point on turn 4. Yeah, you just drop this, the opponent knows you're serious, and now they're left scrambling, looking for a sweeper, possibly a Liliana of the Veil, which has that -2 ability to make you sacrifice a creature. But now, yeah, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. All that removal that they had in their hand, single target removal, useless. Doesn't matter. And you get the job done. And maybe it draws out a sweeper, which is good. That's fine. Maybe, you don't get to attack with Carnage Tyrant. But now they're tapped out. Come around to your turn and you can go Vaultborn Tyrant. Oh, you draw a land, or you're able to make 6 or 7 or 8. You play another Carnage Tyrant, or you do Archdruids Charm to set up to make 8, because you could make 6. Archdruids grabbing another Sunken, putting it onto the battlefield, setting up for Ghalta's Stampede Tyrant down the line. Any number of explosive things can happen. But the main idea is setting up on those first few turns, Sylvan Scrying, Archdruids Charm, grabbing the specific lands that I mentioned, the Sunken, the Castle, whichever one you need. You got to play it through sometimes and just to get comfortable with it. But if you have a Sunken, chances are you're going to be looking for a Castle Garenbrig. That is the most important. If you have to make a decision, grab Castle Garenbrig first, because potentially it could be making a little bit extra. If you have 4 lands plus Castle, you make 6 mana. Sunken Citadel, you can never make extra mana efficiently for creatures, filtering its mana for land sources, their activated abilities. Going through Castle Garenbrig, it's like it taps for 2 mana for a creature, in a sense. But that's the overview. Now, the start. Commune with Dinosaurs. You don't always have to use this, but for 3.5 years, like I mentioned, I was playing Dinosaurs, and they did change quite a bit. certainly with Lost Caverns of Ixalan. But for about 3.5 years, I used Commune with Dinosaurs every day. Oh, the bread and butter, the first thing I added whenever I deleted a list, remaking it, practicing. Consistency-wise, it's just absolutely amazing. Good at any point, digging those, 5 more turns. Sometimes you need to get ahead. And you need to see Ghalta, or you need to see Tyrranax Rex, something big, something impactful, and Commune just fits perfectly. It is an amazing top deck, and speaking of top decks, everything is usually pretty big. The majority of things you can get off the top are going to have a very big impact. But back to Commune. Grabbing a land or grabbing a dinosaur, maybe you start off with a hand that only includes 1 Sunken Citadel, 1 Sylvan Scrying, and 1 Commune with Dinosaurs. I would feel very, very happy with that. Sunken Citadel as your first land, entering tapped. Well, you can't use that green for Commune, but you choose green. Come turn 2, it untaps. Oh, great. Commune with Dinosaurs digs at that point. Grabs a land. You might draw one. We'll see. But let's say you grab Castle Garenbrig. There is a very real possibility that after that starting hand of 7, and then drawing 1 card, 1 or 2, depending if you're on the draw or the play, and then digging that 5. Castle Garenbrig, chances are the first copy is going to be somewhere in that amount, that stack. So you grab it, you play it, tapped as your land for the turn, and then come turn 3 is when you finally go Sylvan Scrying, digging with the green from Sunken, the green from Castle Garenbrig, and you grab a second Sunken, putting it out as your land for the turn on turn 3, and boom, all of a sudden you have 3 lands, you have 2 Sunkens and Castle, and then it goes to turn 4, and you make 6 for Carnage Tyrant. That's a pretty good backup, pretty nice to do something like that, starting with 1 land. And chances are, if you're starting with 1 land, you know there's a decent chance to draw into more. If you do, that's great. If you don't, you just made the magic happen quite fantastically. Maybe you start off with Sylvan and Archdruids, plus 1 Sunken and Commune. Turn 4, you go Archdruids, you search for another land, you get to 7, possibly, or you draw land on turn 4, and all of a sudden you can make that 7 for Vaultborn Tyrant. You have the 2 Sunkens and Castle Garenbrig, and you just play this. It enters, you draw a card, you gain 3 life. If the opponent kills it with non-exile based removal, it just makes a copy, and then you draw a card and you gain 3 more life. Drawing 2, gaining 6, the opponent is going to feel pretty bad. I've had some opponents just scoop because they realized how hopeless their chances were. Sometimes they use 2 pieces of removal on the copy that is made if Vaultborn Tyrant is an original, but we'll get more into Vaultborn Tyrant in a second. Oh, that's one of the best additions. 4 copies all the time if you're playing any dinosaur list. If you're ramping to that big mana, just use 4. You want to see it as often as possible, and you want to see multiples. Yeah, it's that good. It's that good. It's just, it's quite simple, but yeah. Sylvan Scrying, like I mentioned. Turn 2, you might play it, but again, if you play it turn 3 with 2 lands or the 3rd land, really, it's about consistency, seeing those key ones. Lovely stuff, of course, nice to see Cavern of Souls as well. But sometimes that Sylvan Scrying, the game has gone on. You don't exactly need the land, but you should use Sylvan Scrying as early as possible. It can only ever be a land. Maybe you have a turn where you could go Archdruids Charm, but you also have a Sylvan Scrying. It might be a little bit better. This would always just stay in there. Sylvan Scrying, even though it doesn't put the land onto the battlefield, just like Archdruids Charm, grabbing something specific is going to be good. And you save Archdruids Charm potentially. Instead of grabbing a land and putting it onto the battlefield, you could grab a creature, and that could make all the difference. Even with 4 copies of Ghalta's Stampede Tyrant, it's not quite enough to see it as often as I want. There are so many moments and scenarios that I run into. I just need Ghalta. If I saw Ghalta, if I could play it, the following turn the opponent would be dead. Guaranteed, no question. They've got me down to 2 or 3, maybe something aggressive. If I could only top deck this or only see it. It's not like a debate of maybe I would kill him, maybe I wouldn't. You would. You absolutely would, because you have a bunch of other big, powerful creatures. You're going to put Vaultborn Tyrant down with Ghalta Stampede Tyrant. Oh my goodness, that is just lovely stuff. Putting so many creatures down with Vaultborn, it sees all those creatures that entered. Regisaur Alpha, Palani's Hatcher. Let's just say you put 3 big creatures that trigger Vaultborn Tyrant. It triggers itself, then it'd be Regisaur, Palani's, and a Carnage Tyrant, for instance. You're gaining 12 life, you're drawing 4 cards, you're attacking with everything, and it's just so incredibly deadly. But the good thing is, if you have Vaultborn down before Ghalta, reasonably could happen. You know, turn 4 you're making 7. You play this. Next turn you can make 8. Ghalta entering. You get a trigger from Vaultborn Tyrant. You get to draw something, and you could draw one more big thing. Before Ghalta Stampede Tyrant's ability resolves. That's how the stack works. Here you get to order it, if it makes sense to do so, if there is a benefit to switching it up. Ghalta entering triggers something. Vaultborn having something enter triggers something. So of course you want to draw your card from Vaultborn before Ghalta the ability resolves, because you might as well put something else big extra in addition that you didn't already have onto the battlefield. But the great thing is, if you have a Ghalta in hand, 2, you play the first one, boom, you get the trigger, and then you put everything plus the second one out, and that second instance, the second copy, can go below all those stacks of Vaultborn Tyrant. Let's say it's Regisaur, Palani's Hatcher, Carnage Tyrant, and Tyrranax Rex. The opponent is dead, but we want to make sure they're dead in so many scenarios and cases. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 triggers. You're drawing 4 things. That all goes above Ghalta, the second copy that was also put out. Actually, it'd be 5. Okay, 5 because it's the second copy. Oh, it gets nuts. You guys may have seen it before, but 5 triggers from Vaultborn with the batch, with the second copy, and this is below it. And you draw all those things, and those are put out. Oh my goodness, it gets so deadly. And then you still get to attack with it, and it's more triggers for Vaultborn with the second batch, the second instance of this. And they're extra dead. They're dead in just about any scenario. Doesn't matter, you just have to live until the opponent dies. You go down to 1, 2, don't worry. If the opponent is still at full, well, they probably need to be at more than that, 40, maybe even 50, if the turns are so insane and crazy. It doesn't always happen like that, but of course it happens, I think it happens often enough to do that, well, you know what.
Ruthless aggression!
Oh my goodness. Oh, for anybody that is curious why I pressed that, some of you may know, but I do stream this deck pretty much all the time, and I like to sprinkle in those clips just to spice it up. And it's, well, that scenario you can imagine is ruthless. Just so many dinosaurs, all big, all hasty, tons of life gain, tons of card draw, the triggers with Vaultborn. But do you guys think it's too many big things? You know, you want to spread it out. It's too top heavy. That is not the case, absolutely. If you're going to do something like this, you want to maximize the value, you want to maximize the potential. You don't want to be putting in Llanowar elves and whatnot. You don't want to be drawing a bunch of Llanowar elves or dinky little creatures that aren't going to make what you're doing better. Not triggering, not having haste because they're not a dinosaur. It's just, it's not a good time. So you get ahead, you're playing big things ahead of the curve, turn sooner, and then when you do your thing, it's extra deadly because everything is deadly. I love it. I love it. What is the average mana? Oh, 4.6? Oh my. That's pretty high. I've had it up to 5.5 I think 6.1 is my record. That gets a little nuts, but yeah, an average mana value of 4.6. 20 lands as well. You might think that's a little bit too low, but that is not the case. When you have an efficient mixture of lands, you get there. You start to add more above 21, 22, and you're going to run into flooding problems. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Kicking yourself. Even with the card draw, digging with Commune, it is not a pretty sight. Not at all. Oh man. But moving on to the Paradise Druid, sort of a recent addition, a re-edition, I guess you could say. An extra way to potentially go a little bit faster that the opponent cannot deal with. Well, they might be able to deal with it, but it has hexproof as long as it's untapped. So we just play the Paradise Druid on turn 2, turn 3. We're setting up for something big, possibly the Paradise Druid on turn 3. We might be able to make 7 mana on turn 4 with Sunken Citadels, Forest, Castle Garenbrig. That happens often enough. I skip over Carnage Tyrant. I just play Vaultborn or Tyrranax Rex if the situation makes sense to do so. Super aggressive, but if Paradise Druid was the turn 2 play or turn 3, then it comes to turn 4, I can now make 8 with this. The opponent can't kill it. I'm another turn ahead, and boom. I only need to use Paradise Druid's mana once. And maybe they have removal, that's fine, whatever. Fatal Push does not do much to this deck. And then boom, they're dead. They're dead. It only has to happen once, which is lovely. Lovely stuff. Archdruids Charm though. Yeah, man, that changed things quite a bit with murders at Karlov Manor. I was pretty much on this right away. I moved away from it for a bit because it was really only used for grabbing a land, I thought, and then I added it back in. I like to try things that are absolutely good for quite a while and then take it out, see how it feels, get a good perspective, and I certainly have a very good perspective with this deck. My oh my. Thousands of games, 10,000 games, I don't know. I couldn't even begin to imagine how much it is over the years, 6 years, I believe, something like that. Starting off with the original Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan in early 2018. It has been that long, my goodness. Lovely stuff, but again, Archdruids Charm. It's about consistency. 3 green, we have to mention that because it can be pretty rough. Sometimes getting to the 3 green, you have to be very careful. If you have an Archdruids Charm in your opening hand, you really want to make sure you choose that first Sunken as green and possibly the second Sunken as green. Just to get the 2, you might have a forest. You might be tempted. You might be thinking, oh, I need to choose the second Sunken as red. Maybe have something you're splashing for red, or the second Sunken as black. You got these sweepers like I have here, which we'll get into in a moment. It's not so spread out, and we will get into the matchups as well. Every one I can possibly remember. Oh, it feels lovely. You're not super scared about facing a whole lot. Aggro is a little bit rough, but that we'll get into as well. Yeah, this 3 green, so key. If I didn't need Archdruids Charm, if it wasn't in here, the mana base would look a little bit different. Cavern of Souls is about as many lands as I can stomach that don't help to go towards Archdruids Charm. It is a little bit better with Paradise Druids or something that makes treasures, which you guys might come to feel a little bit more comfortable having in. But yeah, basically that's why you see the 2 caverns. Every other source technically makes green, so it is very consistent for Archdruids. If I see Archdruids Charm and I don't need that Cavern of Souls early, I just hold off and you wait to play Cavern. You preserve getting to 3 green on turn 3 for Archdruids Charm. Hopefully somewhere in the mixture you've dropped a Sunken Citadel, Castle Garenbrig, that sort of thing, and you get the job done. Oh, absolutely, you get the job done. But Castle Garenbrig, you might have thought it was a legendary land. That's not the case. Sometimes people get confused. I think it certainly seems like it should be. You can play multiples Don't worry about it. It's all good. And again, it makes mana, the 6 mana, is only for creatures or their activated abilities. That could be quite useful. I don't have anything at the moment that really relies on that, but that could be another angle to explore. But yes, it's not legendary. 4 copies all the time. Again, this is about consistently executing this game plan. Perhaps there could be a couple more tweaks, but it is all I've played since pretty much Ghalta Stampede Tyrant was released. It changed quite a bit, and now it's come to something refined that I'm happy to present and go over it. Absolutely. Very, very exciting stuff. But getting to Palani's Hatcher and Regisaur Alpha. Use all 8 even. You might be sprinkling in other creatures, a 9th or a 10th copy to give all your other stuff haste, because ruthless aggression there, that is really one of the most important things. You want to see this as often as possible, as much as possible. The potential to just dump things, attack, and win that turn. You could be facing an opponent with a sweeper. It might be Deadly Cover-Up, the new one from Murders at Karlov Manor. They can collect evidence. If they do, they can exile a card from your graveyard, and then that card is exiled from your library, your hand. Sometimes it's rough, but you have probably used sweepers. Of course, you've faced off against them, and now they're mostly useless, dead. Doesn't matter. Pretty much every sweeper in the game is sorcery speed, and well, that's too slow for this, because boom, they're dead that turn. That's alright by me. There is a new one with Thunder Junction. Final Showdown, it costs 1 white and then an extra 5 or 4 and 1 white. It's an instant speed sweeper, but it does cost 6, so sometimes that is a little bit too slow. You might have to watch out for that. I've only experienced it once, maybe twice so far in an Azorius Control matchup. And again, we'll get into all the matchups. I'll kind of give a rundown of all of that, how I approach those matchups, and try to keep it focused on one deck at a time so I can add the chapters a little bit easier here. But then moving on to Carnage Tyrant, some of you guys may remember it. You might think it's a sideboard card. You might think you only need 1 or 2 copies if you face off against Control. And also Tyrranax Rex, which is the bigger, sometimes better brother to Carnage Tyrant. You might think, oh, I'll just have these in the sideboard, 1 or 2 copies, bring them in when I face Control, and I should be good. Nah, you just start off with them. Do you know what this is good against? Everything. How many decks have targeted removal, facing counter spells? Don't you want to have something that the opponent can't counter? Game 1, if you're facing off against Azorius Control, Dimir, that sort of thing. Dimir Control can be a little bit more problematic. Blue and black with their sacrificing spells. They don't target Carnage Tyrant, but you do lose it. And sometimes Carnage Tyrant can be the only creature you play. You play this before Palani's Hatcher or Regisaur Alpha, which is quite crazy. It's like Carnage Tyrant costs 4 because you play it on turn 4 when you make 6 green with Castle. Whew. But again, it's a big thing. The opponent can't deal with it. It's a dinosaur. There you go. You play this turn 4 and the opponent's removal continues to sit there as it has sat there for the first few turns. They're scratching their head wondering. They're waiting. They've got this mana up for Fiery Impulse, Lightning Axe with Izzet Phoenix. Get lost with Azorius Control. 1 and a white, destroy an artifact, a creature, and or a planeswalker, and you make 2 map tokens. That's still useless. Doesn't matter. Oh, you have Get Lost. Well, you're done. You're lost. You're searching for answers, and you might not be able to find it in time. Yeah, it's a dinosaur. It's big. Many opponents can't deal with it. It's not just good for Control. It's good because it bashes the opponent in. It has trample along with Tyrranax Rex. It costs 6. You reach that breakpoint on turn 4 for Castle Garenbrig and just go to town. Why would you play something for 6 that maybe can be targeted, probably can be targeted, countered, dealt with, that isn't a dinosaur? Again, I should Well, it should probably stay as many dinosaurs as possible with Regisaur, with Palani's Hatcher, and of course with Commune. You don't want too many non-hits with this and having to pass up something big and nasty. You could have a lovely starting hand. Maybe you got lucky. You have 2 Sunken Citadels plus a Castle Garenbrig. You're going to get 4, well, turn 4 you're going to make 6 when they all untap. Sunken as your first land, maybe Sunken as the second on turn 2, Castle Garenbrig as your third land on turn 3. You can go Commune with Dinosaurs either on turn 2 or turn 3 off of the Sunken, and then, oh, you don't have any other creatures in your hand. You hope to draw into those creatures. With so many, there's a very good chance, but there is a chance you still might not do that. So Commune to grab Carnage Tyrant, you set up for turn 4 and boom, you drop this guy, and then they're wondering, oh, darn. I wish I had a Thought Seize. They see it. It's revealed, so the opponent is preparing potentially an answer for this, which can be quite nice. You might reveal something that can be countered, that can be targeted. You have a Carnage Tyrant already in hand from your starting hand, let's say. But then you go Commune, you reveal Vaultborn Tyrant, and potentially the opponent has done the math. Even though this is an uncommon deck, and sometimes you will surprise the opponent with the explosiveness. Not always, especially when you reach the higher ranks and people read stuff a little bit more often. There's a higher chance of that. They see the Sunken Castle Garenbrig, they put 2 and 2 together, and they're ready for Vaultborn Tyrant. Maybe you have a forest out as well, and they see another land that you've grabbed, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, Vaultborn Tyrant, the opponent's going to be able to make 7 next turn. I've got this counterspell ready. I've got this piece of removal. Again, the removal could be good on Vaultborn if it is destroy based. If it dies, you get that trigger, but getting away from that. They're prepared. They leave mana up for an answer, and then boom. Instead, you surprise them with Carnage Tyrant, and then they're wondering, like, hey, that's not fair. You were supposed to do this, but you did something different that I can't do anything about. So that can be very nice indeed. So they wasted an entire turn, which is good. You want to make the opponent waste time sometimes. Play mind games. Archdruids Charm, especially. Grabbing a big creature, something you're ready to go for. You might reveal Ghalta. The opponent has a counter spell ready for this. They're like, yeah, I'm going to stop them from putting everything out. I'm going to counter this or do something to it. Ether Gust, potentially blue-based or partially blue-based opponent has brought this in from their sideboard. Ether Gust costs 1 in the blue to put a green creature on the top or bottom of your library. It can counter the uncounterable, which it could also counter Carnage Tyrant, but you might want to preserve Ghalta, which is, very, very important. This is the way you win sometimes. So you get it burnt on Carnage Tyrant, that's all right. Now you feel safe. And boom. Sometimes that is what you have to do. You have to draw out a sweeper with Carnage Tyrant. You have to draw out the Ether Gust, even if you have Cavern of Souls facing off against counter spells. Oh my goodness. If you have enough big creatures that when you play Ghalta, it would be lethal. Do something big instead. Even if you can make 8, do something for a little bit less and draw out the costliest thing from the opponent. When it comes back around to their turn and boom, then you're safe to go with this. Maybe they only have 1 mana left, maybe 2. They were going to kill a bunch of stuff. Now they're not. Now they're just dead because you drop a Regisaur or a Palani's. But hopefully you drop multiples. You want redundancy with this. If the opponent has, a couple mana up, if they have 1 piece of removal, if they're wise, they will kill the Regisaur, the single Regisaur, or the single Palani's Hatcher before it goes to combat. These things giving all your other big things haste, that's what you want to do. You want to attack that turn, and then you can't. Sometimes it does delay the inevitable, but again, if the opponent has a sweeper, or if you have to kill them that turn because they will kill you next turn, possibly with flyers or some sort of burn spell, that sort of thing, you want it to happen. So a Regisaur plus a Palani's, 2 of these 8 things is very nice. But again, 9th or 10th option can be quite nice. Paradise Druid, not exactly necessary, but of course it can be quite necessary, especially with the splashing stuff. Very, very important. 5 ways, how's it going? Hopefully all is well. Yes, just getting into it. 35 minutes already, my oh my. I knew I could talk a long time about this primer, and we're just getting into everything. Yeah, I'm having a good time. Hopefully everybody is having a good time watching right now, later on. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love it. I love it. I don't know how long this is going to go. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. I've been meaning to do a primer for forever. So I thought I would do it live. And then it's there. It's done. Ready. Ready for everybody to devour and to learn how you can devour your opponent. But again, going back to Vaultborn Tyrant, that's the bee's knees. If you can pick up a reasonably priced copy in paper, certainly do so. This has increased in price quite a bit because it is so good. It's just so good. If you play one, think to yourself, wouldn't you want another? The first one you played triggered itself. The second one you play will trigger the first one plus itself, and oh, it's just the best. You want to draw more cards, you want to gain more life, you want to stabilize, and you want to see that happen as often as possible. And that's going to happen with the full playset, all 4. Oh, what else we got to go? Oh, Ziatora's Proving Ground, the mana base. I think it's time to look deeper into the mana base and exactly why these lands are the way they are. They fluctuate a little bit, again, based off what you're splashing, whether it is for sweepers or you want a counter spell. It is not hard, absolutely, for the splash of black, blue, red, white, whatever. You get the job done because you have specific things, spells that can search for a land. So it can grab that Overgrown Tomb breeding pool if you need that source of blue, Archdruids Charm, grabbing and maybe putting a second Sunken out. Keep in mind, the first one, chances are you always want to choose green for the 2 green needed for Castle. But the second Sunken, let's say it's chosen as blue, that goes towards the 2 of any color for its activated ability. But then that blue Sunken can also tap for the 1 blue for some counter spell. You get the idea. Very, very easy. Paradise Druid, tapping for the mana of that key splashing card, the hate piece, the tech. Oh, but you don't really need Paradise Druid. This is, unless the spell is very cheap, costing 1 or 2, you might want to sprinkle it in. But by the time it comes around to turn 4, usually it is turn 4, you've got that source of black. Either the Overgrown Tomb, in this case you've seen Ziatora's Proving Ground, that's a total of 5. Sunken Citadel as well. The first Sunken could be chosen as black or blue if you have the other green sources. You might start with a hand that includes Sunken Citadel and 2 forests, but you also have your Extinction Event in. You need that source of black, then you can confidently choose black when you play this as your first land. Chances are you play Sunken as your first land. It always enters tapped, and potentially you want 2 mana for turn 2. You might have a Sylvan Scrying. You might draw a Sylvan Scrying, and you might be kicking yourself. Of course, if you have Commune with Dinosaurs, you might want Sunken chosen as green, but for the most part, Sunken first, get it down. It's not much of a pain. Again, keep in mind, you're building up over the first few turns. Turn 1, turn 2 might be double Sunken. That's good. You go slow to go fast. And you trust in how you get there because it is stable. It is the most stable way because it's lands. That's pretty much the hardest thing to kill. Field of Ruin and Demolition Field can be pretty problematic. Those oftentimes are faced off against Azorius Control or Mono Black Waste Not, causing you to discard a lot of stuff. That is painful. I have used Leyline of Sanctity in the past just to give myself hexproof and protect against it, but it doesn't protect against those lands that sacrifice to destroy my key ones. Castle Garenbrig and Sunken, but otherwise, you're off to the races. The opponent is helpless. Basically, every opponent is helpless. If they haven't killed you fast enough, if they're anything other than aggro, chances are you will probably get the job done. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, feel confident. You want to try out something other than black. You want the counter spells. You want to copy creatures. You want to splash blue. Make a token of Carnage Tyrant, or make a copy of Vaultborn, which would trigger itself, plus trigger off the main one, the original. That could be quite nice as well. Anything that makes copies of Vaultborn Tyrant, oh, that is just going to get nuts. Out of control. Oh my goodness, beautiful. Maybe copies of Ghalta. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. You would have to sacrifice a copy, but it doesn't matter. You get an extra instance of the trigger, and that could be all you need. Vaultborn Tyrant out, you get a draw, or you have the Ghalta out, and you have a bunch of creatures in hand that you've drawn, and maybe the game has gone on long somehow, some way. So you put all those creatures out by making a copy of this, and you sacrifice it, and you get to attack with everything. There could be so many deadly scenarios that you run into by making a copy of creatures. Splashing for blue, white, of course, can be lovely stuff. I'll show you my favorite piece of white tech. That's a J. High Noon. Many of you guys may have seen it before, but do you hate Izzet Phoenix? Which we'll get into specifically. I don't bring this in against Izzet Phoenix because it feels good. I don't have to change anything because more often than not I beat him. Izzet Phoenix specifically with their cheap single target removal. Useless, as you can imagine, as you can see the list right here. But if you really don't like Izzet Phoenix, play this. High Noon, each player can't cast more than one spell each turn. That pretty much cripples Izzet Phoenix, but it also cripples Mono Green Devotion. As you've used or faced, they barf and they spam so many spells in a turn. But now with Mono Green, they're only casting one thing. Maybe they cast a single Storm the Festival. That's it. That's all they're doing. They spend 6 mana on Storm the Festival to look at the top 6 or 5. Put 2 permanents with a mana value 5 or less onto the battlefield. Boom. Doesn't matter how many cards they draw. Kiora, Behemoth, Beckoner, a Planeswalker costing 2 in a blue or a green can untap a permanent. They untap Nykthos. That is tapping to make a bunch of extra mana. But they also get to draw whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield. And also the Outcast or Trailblazer. Oh, that is also quite deadly. Packaging those 2 creatures, drawing whenever a creature enters with 4 power, it's nuts. That doesn't matter how much they draw. Again, they're only playing one thing. Cripple them. It doesn't matter if they can make 30 mana, 40 mana, 50 mana. Playing multiple Nykthoses, Kioras, untapping, tapping, boom. As long as they don't take this out, it's lovely stuff. And this does not hurt me. This is why it is so fantastic. Because when you do your big thing, and sometimes you're only doing one thing a turn. That might be Ghalta Stampede Tyrant as your only thing, putting everything else out. It's like you did multiple things. The opponent is dead as they're scratching their head wondering, hey, how can I get around this? I have to mulligan pretty aggressively for hate. Does the trick. But it also hurts combo decks creativity a little bit. Really discover combo, that is the main thing. But Lotus Field, nah. You get the idea. If you don't like your opponent playing so much, think about this. Of course, you would hope to have possibly your source of white by turn 2. This is pretty cheap, and like I mentioned, having that splashing color by turn 2 can be a little bit problematic. The Overgrown Tomb, chances are you'd want this to be Temple Garden. The white and green Shockland. Yeah, probably Ziatora's Proving Ground. Switch that out for something that enters untapped that gives you that source of white. because it could be quite rough. The first Sunken Citadel, chances are that might have to be chosen as white if you really want to stick this on turn 2. If you play it on turn 3, it still might be fast enough, but I can imagine if you're bringing this in, it's against a deck that can pop off, and this has to happen ASAP. So the mana base would look a little bit different for a hate piece that is splashed for, that is very cheap. So keep that in mind if you're choosing to use High Noon or something else like that. A counter spell, maybe not so much. You're waiting a few turns, the opponent is waiting to do something to you, and then you have the mana up for a counter spell. You tap so many lands that you still have that extra mana, the 1 or the 2 to stop them. That blue, it might be Sunken Citadel, but you'd probably splash for some breeding pools or something like that to get the source of blue. Or Paradise Druid is left untapped and boom, there you go. If they have removal for it, it's too late. You got your source from this and boom, as long as you protect Ghalta, you know, maybe they throw a counter spell your way. They've destroyed Cavern of Souls with their Field of Ruin. Now you're stuck. You don't like it. And you might not be using counter spells ever at all with Tyrranax Rex and Carnage Tyrant, both not being able to be countered. Sometimes Cavern of Souls is not super necessary, but I definitely like 2. For a while there I was using 4 because it wasn't much of a drawback, but I was running into those instances of not being able to cast Archdruids Charm. That's kind of why I didn't use it, because sometimes I had multiple caverns with 4 copies more often than I liked. But then I realized, hey, Archdruids Charm is so key, but I still want Cavern. I cut it down to 1. Wasn't quite enough. Whenever I do face off against people with counter spells, it's nice to have the second one, especially to see it just a little bit more often, and also if they destroy it with that Field of Ruin or Demolition Field, they think, oh yeah, I got him, ready to go. Maybe they think I only have 1 in the list. Well, that could be a very real possibility. Oh, and then I get Sylvan Scrying. The opponent isn't worried about this. Then I get my second cavern, the last one there, and then they're kicking themselves. I play it, or potentially I save it, which is a very, very key point. Land destruction. This is what we're calling this chapter, I think. If you don't want Castle Garenbrig to be destroyed, don't play it. Perhaps you're facing off against an opponent that is using land destruction. They have that Field of Ruin, the Demolition Field, and you see it. You wait until the turn that you're going to activate it, that you're going to make all that big mana. The opponent cannot destroy the land before you use its ability. You will get a use out of it. By that point, it's too late. It doesn't matter if it's gone. You've made the 6 mana. They can't respond to you playing a land, which is lovely stuff. They see the Castle Garenbrig in your hand. They hold up mana for that land destruction that you know they have. And they just never play it. You never play it. They're ready and waiting. Oh, I'm going to get Castle Garenbrig. When they play it, and then boom, you hit turn 4, maybe turn 5. You have to wait a little bit, perhaps, and it's all over. It's lights out because they spent that time waiting, which is another good thing. They see what you're doing, commune with dinosaurs, maybe on turn 1. That's a pretty good tell. Oftentimes, again, because this particular dinosaur list is quite uncommon, they think there's going to be those smaller creatures around, the stuff that they can destroy, the lovely creatures, of course, which is another point I want to get into. Many variations of dinosaurs, more aggressive lists, accomplishing different things in different ways. You can find success with whatever, but again, it is much more common. They think, oh, I'm going to kill that elf that the opponent is going to play. They're going to play Reckless Stormseeker, lovely creature, 2 in red. At the beginning of combat, you can give +1/+0 and haste, I believe, to a creature. Lovely for haste. Or it can flip, and it's the bigger thing, the werewolf, that gives +2/+0, haste, and trample. Deadly. Oh, but a creature they can easily kill. That will come down on turn 2, turn 3, ready, waiting for all that sort of stuff. Or just a cheap dinosaur. Yeah, I got that removal. And it just never happens. It never happens. You play these lands and the opponent's like, oh, comes back to turn 3. They're going to play something, and you still don't. And they're wondering, does this opponent have any early creatures? Oh, they must have kept a bad hand. They don't have any early plays, but you do have early plays. You're setting up. They don't know what you're setting up for until it's too late. And it may not matter what they have because, boom, you do your big thing. Boom, your big thing. Big. Good. Regisaur Alpha. Oh, lovely stuff. And also Regisaur and Palani's Hatcher. Going back to these. Multiple bodies in one. Sometimes you just want to buy time. That is one of the most important things. As long as you buy an extra turn, that might be all it takes to take down the opponent. You might not want to play Palani's Hatcher. You have a Ghalta in hand. You can't quite get to the 8 mana, but you can play Palani's. Especially this probably is a little bit better than Regisaur Alpha because it's 3 bodies in one. You don't attack with the egg if you're, well, the egg that is cracked, if you're trying to buy time. You got 3 chump blockers. Boom. Lovely. You crack one, you've got a 3/3. You got the 0/1, which, hey, you might block something big from the opponent. The Dinosaur that you hatch blocks. Maybe Palani's Hatcher as well. That's fine. That's fine. Could be a very massive turn. The following turn with Vaultborn, with Ghalta, even if it is just Ghalta, Tyrranax Rex, and Vaultborn Tyrant, that might be all it takes. You're gaining a bunch of life with the trigger from T-Rex and Vaultborn. You got Ghalta, you get to attack with Tyrranax Rex, and all of a sudden, boom. It's not the worst thing in the world that Palani's Hatcher had to block. It died. Again, it would be nice to give everything haste, but it doesn't really matter. If you didn't play this, if you didn't have 3 creatures to block, yeah, you would have died. So you do this, you buy time, don't worry about it. You got lots of big stuff that might be coming up. But of course you have to evaluate all kinds of situations. What has the opponent done? How many creatures do they have out? Does it make sense to play this or play that? Just play the deck. And you'll see in so many scenarios, fringe cases as well. You'll think you've seen it all and then you haven't. Maybe you get super lucky. You put 1 Ghalta out. You have 2 more in hand because you've drawn it. You have a Vaultborn Tyrant stacking all those triggers. Oh man, that would be sweet. Drawing into hasty stuff, you're down to 1. Don't worry. You drop this and you could be dropping the opponent. Even if you just played a Vaultborn, you gain a little bit of life. You stabilize just enough to live when the opponent attacks, bringing you down to 1 or 2. If you hadn't played Vaultborn, you would have been dead. And then boom, you play Ghalta with no other creatures in hand. That's happened to me multiple times before. You're not going to be able to attack with it, but with that trigger from Vaultborn that you had played previously, you draw the Regisaur Alpha, it's put onto the battlefield, boom, all of a sudden you get to attack with Ghalta, a 12/12 trample, the 3/3 token from this, Vaultborn Tyrant of course, which the opponent might just not want to block. They might have to, because they're dead. You're attacking the opponent with 18, 21 damage. Oh my goodness. Maybe they were extra aggressive. The opponent has seen red. They're at full health, 20. Oh, they're not worried. This is a dinosaur opponent. They haven't done anything for the first few turns. There's no way they can take me from 20 to nothing in 1. Boom. And you do that sequence. You weren't able to do that sequence, but you drew into it. So absolutely stay positive. Play to your out, because your out means the opponent is out. Oh, getting into the positivity aspect. When you know everything is good that you can top deck, there is such a good chance to top deck something big. You might be waiting for Ghalta. You have so many big creatures and just play it out. Draw 1 more card. As long as you're not dead, you're still in it. That's what I've loved about this. It's easy to stay positive, even if the opponent has thrown a bunch of thought seizes against you, which is a very real possibility. That, as some of you guys have seen, is, yeah, that's all they have to do. Turn 1 thought seize for 1 black, target player discards a card and they lose 2 life. Oh, shucks, that hurts. Any sort of discard is rough, but also keep in mind, what is something an opponent cannot discard? Usually, you can't discard, at least with the targeted removal like Thoughtseize, a land, non-land card. Perhaps, it's game 2. You're facing off against a discard-heavy opponent, mono black waste not, and you're wondering, oh man, what can I do? You mulligan a few times, you have to send a few cards to the bottom of your library. Just keep all lands. It might be Sunken Citadel, Castle Garenbrig. Oh my goodness, pardon me. It's almost midnight my time. I'm in Ontario, Canada, for anybody who is not familiar. Oh, and usually I say what I'm drinking. A berry bomb G Fuel. Lovely stuff. Got to get fired up. Even though I'm fired up for Dinosaurs, if I am a little bit sleepy, this does the trick. But I never get tired of putting opponents to sleep, that's for sure. But what was I on? I lost my train of thought. I shouldn't have gone off on a tangent. Something about forests. Let me think. Oh, yes, the discard. Okay, back on track. Discard decks. Mono black. Waste not. Oh, shucks. You mulliganed a few times. You put those things onto the bottom. You keep a hand of only lands. Even if it is two Sunken Citadels and a Castle Garenbrig. You mulligan super hard. So many times to get a good hand. And then finally you see this. You have to put 4 cards on the bottom. Not a problem. Pretty much not a problem. They can't get rid of it. They go turn 1 Thoughtseize. Maybe you took that discard opponent down in game 1 and they're shook. They want to Thoughtseize away something big and nasty, but they can't. They go turn 1. They lose 2 life for nothing. They paid 1 black to lose 2 life and reveal your hand. Because they can't get rid of a sunken or any land, which is lovely stuff. Sometimes that's how I've done the trick. How I've won. There's a very good chance you're going to be drawing 1 Commune, 1 Sylvan, 1 Archdruids Charm. That's 12 things, possibly Paradise Druid, 16. Boom. All of a sudden, you're searching, you're digging. Chances are, because you put all that stuff on the bottom, plus with how many big things you have, there's a very real possibility you'll just draw into it. In that scenario, perhaps. However likely it is, the 2 Sunkens and Castle draw into Carnage Tyrant. Maybe you get Vaultborn. You're hoping you can make that 7th mana. Again, there's a good chance you'll draw into the next land, or you get Sylvan, boom. You get that next mana you need. Commune with Dinosaurs. Archdruids. Any number of things. Things might look pretty bleak. You might have few lands, but with those few lands, you make a ton of mana. Oh, it is so lovely. It is just nice to persevere against all that discard hate. Maybe they get rid of your single Ghalta. They think, this person isn't... they wouldn't have multiple copies of Ghalta. Maybe 1, 2 at the most. Why would you have multiples? That doesn't make sense. No. You still got 3 copies. Maybe this is the only thing you keep in your hand, just in case they don't get rid of it. That's alright. Stay positive. You'll get the job done, just as I have gotten the job done many times before. Your back's against the wall, and it is lovely stuff when you persevere, when you mulligan so many times, especially if you're mulliganing for such a fantastic hate card. Speaking of Leyline of Sanctity, which I mentioned I think at the start. My goodness, I've been going for an hour. We're still going. We haven't got into the deck tech stuff yet. I haven't even gotten to the sideboard. I think you can tell how much I play this deck. Yeah, that's for sure. If you had any doubt, yeah, we're not done yet. I don't know. I might go till 1. My goodness. Yeah. Okay, moving away from the lands. I think it's time we migrate to the sideboard. At the moment, this is what I'm on, but again, you can splash in and out. You might think this is a little bit wacky, but again, with a stable way to get to big stuff, hard to interrupt, there's not a whole lot I'm scared of. Again, if the opponent is anything other than aggro, if they're going a little bit slow, I don't care what you are. You're just dead. Of course, they could have the odd counter spell, maybe the odd way to stop Ghalta, but there is a very high chance any deck that isn't super fast is dead. Quite simple. Yeah, covers just about everything. Not everything, but the specific hate. Pick your poison. Why is that in? At the moment in Pioneer and Explorer, there is the Rakdos Vampires matchup. Sorin Imperious Bloodlord, 2 and a black, -3. You can put a vampire from your hand onto the battlefield. And that oftentimes, sadly, is the Vein Ripper from Murders at Karlov Manor, 3 and 3 black for a 6/5 flying. Whenever a creature dies, yours or the opponent's target opponent loses 2 life and they gain 2. With Leyline of Sanctity, if you have Hexproof, the Vein Ripper's triggered ability, it doesn't happen at all, which could be lovely stuff, but pick your poison. The Vein Ripper has the ward ability. If you target it, you have to sacrifice a creature, otherwise that spell or ability is countered. However, pick your poison. Oftentimes against Rakdos Vampires, Vein Ripper is the only creature with flying that they have. They get it down on turn 3, boom. You have that pick your poison ready and waiting to just make them sacrifice it. You do lose 2 life, but that's pretty much the best case scenario. Ooh, oh my goodness. But yeah, for anybody that is having trouble with it, I think many of us have used pick your poison. It is a common, so certainly that is not a big hoop to jump through wildcard wise. If you don't like Vein Ripper, use this, but also it can come in very, very handy for making the opponent sacrifice an artifact or an enchantment. That could be hate against you. Damping Sphere, of course, probably is the main thing. Even Rakdos Vampires has brought in Damping Sphere against me, which I think we'll get into. I think many people know Damping Sphere, but just in case. It's a classic, fantastic artifact for 2. If a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces a colorless instead of any other type and amount. That's pretty painful. Sometimes, the odd time I've used it myself in the sideboard with the plan that I'll take out my own Damping Sphere at instant speed, hopefully, at the end of the opponent's turn with Archdruids Charm or something like that. But if there is an opponent I'm bringing Damping Sphere in for, chances are they have their own removal for it, so they might help me. I'm hurt, but they're hurt more. Boom, they get rid of it. And then next turn I pop off, potentially if it's turn 4, turn 5. But again, Damping Sphere, if the opponent has brought it in against you, maybe it is the only artifact. Pick your poison could be a very nice way to get rid of that for a single green. Very, very versatile, but also Damping Sphere specifically, the game might have just gone on long enough. The opponent is going a little bit slower, perhaps with their own Damping Sphere. They are going to be going slower, but you get to 8 lands. That's not unheard of, and then Damping Sphere is doing nothing. 8 total lands. You can't make the efficient stuff with Castle Garenbrig, but who cares? You're making 8, you play Ghalta, and then that Damping Sphere is feeling perhaps a little bit silly for the opponent, which is lovely stuff. And you get there a little bit sooner with Paradise Druid. I must say, this is lovely stuff. I like it being a creature. Of course, it could be another spell that makes a treasure, something non-creature wise. Just having this as another creature that maybe is put out with Ghalta Stampede Tyrant, that is oh so nice. Lovely stuff. So, pick your poison, pretty versatile, but again, mostly it is just to make the opponent sacrifice a flying creature, the Rakdos Vampire's opponent, to sacrifice that creature with flying. Boom. There we go. We cover Rakdos Vampires. Tranquil Frillback, well, could be used to take out the Damping Sphere, possibly. But keep in mind, this is very important. When Tranquil Frillback enters, you may pay green up to 3 times. That's not an activated ability. You might surprise yourself. You'll learn the hard way, as I have. You play Castle Garenbrig, you do its ability. You make 6 green and you think, oh, that's nice. I'm going to play Tranquil Frillback for 3. And with the other 3 green I have left over from Castle, I'm going to put that towards Tranquil Frillback. I'm going to destroy an artifact or enchantment. I'm going to exile target player's graveyard. That might be some graveyard shenanigan deck. It could be Izzet Phoenix, which, again, I don't do anything specifically for because I just beat them up better than they beat me up often enough. And there is examples of all these things. I'm not just saying, oh, I beat them up better. You'll find many good examples that the opponent is quite helpless. Not just Phoenix, but yeah, that 3 green can't go towards this. This is not an activated ability. And I've forgotten it a couple times until I didn't, and then I'm never going to forget it again. Man, that was rough stuff. Sometimes I would make the 6 for Castle Garenbrig, or the auto tapper might do it itself. Keep in mind, the auto tapper, sometimes it's good. Usually it is pretty good. When it comes specifically to Cavern of Souls, it'll make Castle Garenbrig's mana use its ability without using the colorless from Cavern. That could go towards Castle. It'll maintain it and automatically use it for a dinosaur to make it uncounterable. Not necessarily if you're facing off against a deck with counter spells, but it usually is pretty good for that. Yeah, but Tranquil Frillback, keep in mind if you're using it, don't make that mistake. But again, you might not need Tranquil Frillback. As if I was going to destroy artifacts or enchantments, I would destroy all artifacts or enchantments. If you really hate enchantments, I gotta highlight my favorite card for that, which many of you people know. Making sure I wasn't covering the card too much. Usually this is about the size I have. Back to Nature. 1 in a green, instant speed, destroy all enchantments. How much more straightforward can you get? You guys might not have been aware of this card. It is from M15. Quite a while ago it was added to Arena, but imagine all the enchantment decks you have faced or potentially used, and then you smoke them. It's not very common you will run into an enchantment-based deck, at least I don't, but in the past it was 5-color, Fires of Invention, Enigmatic Incarnation, Fires of Invention specifically. Actually, I'll highlight that just because we're on the Back to Nature kick, but put 2 and 2 together. They got lots of enchantments. You might want to sprinkle in a couple copies of this. When I was using it, I oftentimes kept it at 2 copies, but even at 3, because I just wanted to see it that often. You play this against certain decks and it's basically you win. They invested all those resources into playing all those enchantments, and poof, it goes up in smoke at the end of their turn, again because it is instant speed. But yeah, Fires of Invention. 4, where are we at? So, okay. Boom, we found it. All right, Fires of Invention from Eldraine. Our first visit to Eldraine, 3 in a red. You can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells in each turn, which is pretty rough. You may cast spells with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana cost. So, they reach 4 mana, 4 lands, they play Fires of Invention. Immediately afterwards, they can play another spell for nothing, as long as it has a mana value 4 or less, or, again, based on the lands that they have. And that gets out of control real quick. Maybe they play something else for 4. It could be Enigmatic Incarnation, which has the ability to sacrifice an enchantment at the end of their turn. And based off that enchantment's mana value +1, they get to search for a creature and put it onto the battlefield. Very painful, a very nasty toolbox deck, searching up that 1 of or 2 of creature in their deck to hate against you, whatever makes the most sense in the moment. It's not fun, but again, if you know what you're playing against, if you know you're playing against that, you have your Back to Nature ready and waiting. They play Fires of Invention, they play Enigmatic Incarnation. You wait until before the end of the turn, the second main phase, just before you pass to the end of a turn, and you destroy everything. They don't get that trigger from Enigmatic Incarnation, and many times. That has been lovely stuff. Very easy to sideboard that in, and lovely to have instant speed interaction, I must say, for those particularly painful matchups. Even though you get lots of hasty interaction, the most important interaction is with the opponent's face, taking them down to 0 or less. But more instant speed, the better, for something tricky. But Tranquil Frillback covered that. Not particularly necessary, but covers a lot of angles, and it's a dinosaur. If you're desperately looking for hate against something specific, Commune with Dinosaurs can now grab your enchantment or artifact hate, or your graveyard hate, or you want to gain a bit of life because you want to stabilize. Tranquil Frillback would be lovely. If it was a power 4, if it was a 4/3, might be a little bit too good. Just something else that can trigger Vaultborn Tyrant. But don't worry, don't get too caught up in maximizing that even more. I think with what it is right here, the number of creatures that do trigger it, definitely enough. Even if you wanted to, say, move Tyrranax Rex to the sideboard, bring in Tranquil Frillback because you're worried about something with graveyards or artifacts or enchantments. You're worried about facing it game 1 and you want some hate. You still have plenty of stuff. Vaultborn, triggering another Vaultborn, Ghalta, everybody hasty. It still should be quite nice. But speaking of maybe moving something to the sideboard, bringing it in, Carnage Tyrant. I would probably always keep this in. Don't cut this ever. Don't do it. You want to start off with at least something that costs 6 green. Something that Castle Garenbrig's mana can be sunk into. You're going to be kicking yourself. Sometimes you don't have Carnage Tyrant. You don't have anything for 6. You're hoping to draw it. Come turn 4, oh, lovely, you can make 6. But you can't spend anything on it. You can't make one of that 6 a source of red for Palani's Hatcher. There is some creatures where you can spend mana as if it was mana of any color for a creature, but that's not in this list at the moment. It is pretty rough, and you could make Paradise Druid something that costs 6 or 5 or potentially 4, so you're still doing something on turn 4 if you don't have Carnage Tyrant, but definitely want a little bit in that range. Nah, it's not fun to not be doing anything, that's for sure. Of course, it will always happen sometimes, but reduce that chance. So yeah, Extinction Event, boom, there you go. Why do I have Extinction Event? What is it used for? Mono Green Devotion, that particular deck, making a bunch of mana, playing a bunch of creatures. Sometimes those creatures get haste, but we'll get into that later on in a little bit. Most of their creatures are an odd mana value. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, Old Growth Troll, Cavalier of Thorns, Polychronos, pretty much everything else. Oh, lovely stuff. So they barf a bunch of creatures, they're ready to go. They play a lot of creatures in one turn because they can make a lot of mana, but they don't attack with it. They think they're, in a good position. Yeah, I got a bunch of creatures. I'm going to kill the opponent next turn because I have so much power. Not the case. Boom. Extinction Event. Everything evaporates. The Old Growth Troll has a death trigger. When it dies, instead of putting it into your graveyard, you can return it to enchant a land, and then that land can tap for 2 green. Doesn't happen because Old Growth Troll doesn't die. It's exiled. Cavalier of Thorns, when it dies, you mill cards or something like that. You get to put a card back on top of your library. Doesn't happen. Oh man, it packs a punch. Outcaster Trailblazer as well, a creature, odd mana value. Boom. Sometimes this can be a complete one-sided sweeper, and again, going with the sweeper angle, you don't have those cheap creatures. You don't have to worry about losing creatures yourself oftentimes. When you do this, you're either going to play a big thing turn 4, Carnage Tyrant, or you're sweeping. Chances are if you want to sweep, you're sweeping. You don't lose anything. It's not a drawback. It's one-sided. In the case of Mono Green Devotion, often one-sided, and you're feeling pretty good. They have nothing, and then the next turn it comes back around to you. You start dropping bombs, and the opponent is scrambling to recover. And speaking of recover, they're probably not going to recover from Culling Ritual. What is Culling Ritual in for? Extinction Event also could be used for Rakdos Vampires. Blood Tithe Harvester is even. Vein Ripper is even. It costs a mana value of 6. Maybe the opponent has been 1 turn slow on the Vein Ripper. They get it down on turn 4 because they draw their Sorin Imperious Bloodlord. Boom! Extinction Event. That's all gone. And also, there is no death trigger. Exile gets around the death trigger from the Vein Ripper. Lovely stuff. So keep that in mind as well. And it only requires 1 black. It's just about the easiest thing. By turn 4, like I mentioned, if you know you have this in, you focus on getting that source, whatever it has to come from. But going to Culling Ritual. Why do I have Culling Ritual? For all the small stuff. Boom. There you go. Any aggressive deck? Again, sometimes aggressive decks, they just get the job done. You can't be super good against everything. But if they leave you at 1 or 2, comes back around to your turn, and you're able to go Culling Ritual, poof, all that goes away. Based on all the non-land permanents you destroy, you can make a black or a green. So you might sweep with Culling Ritual. You might be at a point where you can make the 4 mana for Culling Ritual. You have 5 lands. And you leave Castle Garenbrig untapped as the 5th land. You destroy so many permanents. You can make 4 mana. At least 2 of that is green. So you destroy a bunch of stuff. You make enough mana for Castle Garenbrig's ability off of the Culling Ritual's temporary mana. You activate this. You play Carnage Tyrant, possibly Vaultborn Tyrant. You could have 4 forests. Wow, you need a source of black. Okay, an Overgrown Tomb and 3 forests. You go Culling Ritual. You destroy so many things that you make 8 mana. That is a very real possibility against decks like Insidious Roots, Golgari, Insidious Roots, based around bringing creatures back from the graveyard. Creatures leaving the graveyard, they make a plant whenever that happens, and whenever it happens, they put a counter on each plant. They sacrifice a lot of little stuff. They have almost entirely non-land permanents with a mana value 2 or less. Boom. They have so much stuff, they're ready to kill you. That stuff doesn't have haste, so we get a chance if they have a big turn. Poof. You could make reasonably 10 mana from this. You make so much mana from your sweeper that you get to play Ghalta, and the opponent is feeling pretty silly. Left wondering, what the heck can I do against that? Not a whole lot. Izzet and Soul artifacts, that can be rough. Not so rough with this. All those little enchantments, little creatures, the clue tokens, blood tokens potentially, all gone. Which is lovely stuff. It doesn't take out just creatures. Everything. Decimated. Somebody's doing something kind of aggro related, something kind of funny. Possibly, hey, Commander Crane. Here's the shout out. Playing against that, the green-white auras. Rough stuff. Very rough stuff. I was listening to the match, and something like Culling Ritual, just poof, smoke them out of the water. The Glade Cover Scout, I believe it is. It's not legal on Explorer yet. There are a couple key cards that aren't available yet. At the end of this year, though, Explorer will become level with tournament level Pioneer, so keep that in mind. But the Glade Cover Scout, 1 green for a 1/1 hexproof. You can't target it. That's not fun. And the Aura's opponent, as an Aura's deck does, enchantments that they put on this one creature, they make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And because hexproof, you can't kill it, so it's left to its own devices and getting flying, lifelink, trample, you name it. It's pretty nasty. You're left, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And then you have Culling Ritual. Poof. That creature that you couldn't target, gone. Because Culling Ritual doesn't target stuff. It's just out of the way. And you destroy all those little enchantments that cost 1 or 2. Attach that creature. You make, poof, all of it. 6 mana. 6 mana. Lovely stuff. Maybe you don't even have Castle Garenbrig. Playing Carnage Tyrant after you wipe out that particular opponent would be lovely stuff. But just the fact that Culling Ritual, it covers so much. All the stuff that used to hurt me, because I didn't always use Culling Ritual. I've tried it over the years in the past, and now I'm back on it because it brings in line all the stuff that hurt me. I don't like super specific hate. I like varied stuff, and I'm not super scared against much, and this definitely makes me less scared. Use it, absolutely. What point are we at? The sweepers. What am I scared about? Nothing. Why do we have all this? For all the small stuff? Check. Mono green devotion or maybe vampires? Check. Tranquil Frillback for perhaps the odd graveyard thing? Boom. I'm not worried about graveyard stuff usually. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow assembling some sort of shenanigans, and again, if the opponent is going a little bit slow, they might be a lot of dead. That's for sure. That's the name of the game. Oh, and pick your poison too. You got a lot of options. It's nice to, again, be able to splash for just about anything. If you have something you don't like playing against, excuse me, search out for that hate and get the job done. But we'll call this the matchup section. Actually, maybe I'll play a clip.
But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
That might be the opponent when I do something to them. They might think, oh, I have a good matchup against dinosaurs. I kind of know this deck. They play a bunch of creatures. They like to grind it out. I'm going to get the job done. And then they realize they have pretty much no chance whatsoever. But this is the matchup section. What is my favorite matchups? There are quite a few. I think I would have to say regular Azorius Control. What is Azorius Control? Blue and white. They play counter spells, stopping you from doing something. I go to cast Regisaur Alpha. The opponent counters it with No More Lies. Oh, that's rough. Goes to my graveyard. Nothing happens. I'm feeling bad. But against that deck specifically, I'm not doing a whole lot that they can deal with. They might counter Sylvan Scrying if I'm on the play though. Going with my first land and the opponent goes their first land, it comes back around to me. I play my second land, possibly. The first one was sunken, it enters tapped. That's okay. We're used to going slow. Again, go slow to go fast. Sunken untaps on turn 2. I play forest. I have 2 available. I go with Sylvan Scrying. The Azorius Control opponent, oh, they only have 1 mana. They don't have the counter spell ready. They can't. The cheapest counter spell they have perhaps costs 2. There is some that cost 1, but for the most part, usually if they only have 1 mana, I get to go this. I grab Castle Garenbrig and we're laughing. I only have to draw 1 other land. It doesn't matter, and at least I'm making 6. You might be lucky. No? You just draw into the second sunken, you play it, boom. All of a sudden, like I mentioned, you have 2 sunkens plus castle, plus some other land, you're making 7. And yeah, the opponent's ready. They got their counter spell. It's turn 3, it's turn 4. I'm going to stop what they're doing. And it just doesn't happen. Well, you don't have Cavern of Souls, and they're thinking to themselves, what am I supposed to do? I can't counter it, I can't target it yet. Tyrranax Rex does have the ward 4 cost, so, usually you get to connect once. The opponent plays possibly Wandering Emperor, as is, well, it's in every Azorius Control list, I would imagine. So they play it, they make a Samurai. They've tapped out just to play the Emperor. They can't pay the ward 4 cost, the extra 4, but come back around to their turn. They target it, it's tapped, they exile it, and they tap out completely on that turn in their main phase, and they're doing nothing. And I just played something that cost 7, and they're tapped out. Perhaps it comes back around again. I'm able to make 8. They're tapped out. You play Ghalta, and you have Regisaur in hands. Plus 1 other dinosaur. Every other dinosaur is big, so that chances are is going to be lethal. Even if it is just Ghalta, Regisaur, and also another Palani's Hatcher. Keep in mind, you want all 8. Don't do any less. The first Regisaur gives the second one haste. Palani's Hatcher, Regisaur haste, you get the idea. Each giving the other haste on the turn they enter means you get to attack with them. If it is just Regisaur, doesn't give itself haste. That's not great. So you want maximum ruthless aggression, just like John Cena says. And yeah, that does the trick. Yeah, Azorius Control. Oh, they're waiting. They got removal. Doesn't matter. Maybe they counter the first Sylvan Scrying. Maybe you're super good. You got 2 Sunkens and a Castle Garenbrig. You go with Sylvan Scrying on turn 3. Unfortunately, with that combination, they counter it. They think, oh man, I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. I'm going to continue to hold up a counter spell. Just doesn't matter. And then they're scrambling. They're looking for the sweeper. They might have, they might not. Oh, that's fine. Even when the opponent sweeps, you've played one big thing a turn. That's not too bad. Then they're tapped out. And then you follow it up with another big thing the next turn. They basically have to have a sweeper every turn. Chances are if you play Tyrranax Rex, they do. Carnage Tyrant might be a little bit more preferable. Again, hexproof, they can't target ever, whatsoever. So that definitely does tend to draw out a sweeper. Tyrranax Rex, sometimes they can, especially if the game has gone on long against Azorius Control. You might just not get anything off with this. You might play it for 7. The opponent has 6 mana. They use Get Lost on this for a total of 6, which, hey, if they want to pay 6 to get rid of one thing, that's fine. I'm not too worried. It might be the only thing you play because they have swept on previous turns, but that's all right. That's all right. But Carnage Tyrant, if you want to draw out the sweeper from the Azorius Control opponent, go with this. Even if you can make 7 on turn 4, you might just want to spend 6 and make them squirm a bit, make them think, oh, man, I have to sweep it immediately. I can't let this thing attack. It doesn't have haste, so they're like, yeah, I'm going to save myself from taking 7 damage. Ooh, I got to do what I got to do. Maybe they play Sunfall, possibly. Cost 5. Oh, shoot. Darn, whatever am I going to do? I'm going to play Tyrranax Rex next turn. They lost the sweeper. They're hit for 8. Oh, Vaultborn Tyrant. I don't have Cavern of Souls, but the Azorius Control opponent is tapped out. Boom. If you can find a window where they're tapped out or they have 1 mana and you're deciding between something that can't be countered and something that can, you might want to sneak it in. Get the benefit of Vaultborn. Possibly you might just want Palani's Hatcher, a nice little bit of aggression. It might be the only thing you can do after they have swept. You play Carnage Tyrant, they sweep, you play Palani's Hatcher, tapped out. You know you're going to at least crack the 1 egg. You're going to attack for 3. They're going to be feeling the pain. They're going to probably want to sweep again. They're going to see Palani's Hatcher. They're not going to want you to crack the 2nd egg, which reminded me of this point as well. I'm going to continue to be reminded of points as I go here. But multiple Palani's Hatchers. Let's say the opponent has fatal pushed 1 egg, playing against something black related, partially black. Oh, nuts. You have no eggs. You've cracked the first one, you've lost the second. You play a 2nd Palani's Hatcher, making 2 eggs, but you get 2 triggers from both Palani's Hatchers. So the 2 eggs you made with the 2nd one both get cracked at the beginning of combat, and you get to attack with all 3. Use all 4 Palani's Hatchers. All 4. Absolutely. Even if you're not playing this list, you want that potential. You've lost eggs in combat. You had to chump block with eggs. You play a 2nd copy, you have none. Boom, they're both cracked. Both triggers from both Hatchers. It's lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. But again, going back to Azorius Control. Well, not too much trouble. You're waiting to do stuff. You're building up your explosive amount of mana, and the Azorius Control opponent is left scratching their head. They've got all these counter spells. Maybe they've countered a Sylvan Scrying. They're feeling good, but you're still progressing. It doesn't matter. They're waiting to do something. They're waiting for you to do something. And then when you do something, they realize, oh, shoot, I can't do anything. I have to look for something specific. And now they're in a race. They have to have a sweeper every turn. If they have a sweeper, if it is destroy based, they're going to feel extra bad. You get the trigger with Vaultborn, you make a copy, you draw a card, gain some life. You drop something big next turn to gain a trigger from to copy the token that was made, and then they're thinking, man, I really need that Sunfall. I really need a sweeper that exiles everything. So they prioritize that. They maybe send Supreme Verdict to the bottom because they don't want to trigger this ability, which is good. Sunfall does cost 5. Well, Supreme Verdict costs 4, and hey, if you go a little bit slower, I'm fine with that. But again, Azorius Control, my favorite matchup. Absolutely many fantastic examples here over the years, but definitely it got better with Tyrranax Rex and Carnage Tyrant, and Vaultborn Tyrant, just the absolute icing on the cake. Yeah, you guys might not have expected if you're new here. Oh, you can, Dinosaurs are heavily favored. They are, with this, heavily favored against Azorius Control. That is the case, and you will find that out eventually if you decide to go this route. But coming up, Izzet Phoenix. Oh my. Yeah, again, Izzet Phoenix, as I mentioned a little bit before, a few times now, they have that cheap removal, Fiery Impulse for 1 red to deal 2 damage, or if they have at least 2 instant or sorceries in their graveyard, it deals 3 damage to a creature. Keep in mind, what are they killing? It's too late. It's basically useless. They might just kill the dinosaur token or maybe an egg. They kill the egg that I'm going to hatch. They wait until the trigger is on the stack and whatever. It doesn't do much. If that's the only thing they're killing, who cares? It could have happened on a turn when Ghalta barfed everything. Yeah, it's useless. Basically useless. It's stuck in their hand. They see the Commune. Again, they think there's those small creatures that they're going to destroy, and you just never play them. There's nothing. It sits. Possibly Lightning Axe, which is also in all Izzet Phoenix lists. For 1 red, they can pay an extra 4, I believe 4 or 5, or discard a card to deal 5 damage to a creature at instant speed. Lovely stuff, but again, Lightning Axe, who cares? You drop a bunch of big bodies. However, it can come into effect, potentially, with Palani's Hatcher, which specifically has 3 toughness. It could be taken down by Fiery Impulse from Izzet Phoenix, and that has happened before. So again, goes back to having redundancy, multiple copies, 2 Palani's Hatchers, a Palani and a Regisaur, just in case they can get rid of it. But we should probably get into what is Izzet Phoenix. It's a little bit, slightly more complicated than Azorius Control. Maybe Azorius Control is a little more complicated. No. I'm tired. Bear with me. Close enough. That'll get me the bird. It won't. Do I not even have a single copy? Oh my goodness. I've been playing this game since beta, and I have not opened a single copy of the namesake of Izzet Phoenix. That is Arclight Phoenix, so I'll have to go not owned. I could have sworn I had at least 1 copy. That's why I'm not finding it. But Izzet Phoenix, namesake Arclight Phoenix there. 3 in a red for a 3/2 flying haste at beginning of combat on your turn. If you've cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells, you return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that Lightning Axe, like I mentioned, it is a boon. The card that they discard could be the Phoenix, and now they have it in their graveyard, and they've taken out one of your things, but they haven't, because you haven't played anything they can target. Sometimes, with the Ledger Shredder that is also in all the Phoenix lists, it might have gotten so big that they simply have to target their own Ledger Shredder just to meet the requirement of casting 3 or more instant or sorcery spells. And going to that point of casting multiple spells, sometimes they are tapped out. They think they're good with the aggression. They get a Phoenix out on turn 4. Maybe they get 2 Phoenixes. They deal 6 damage to you. But again, they've dealt 6 damage on turn 4. And then they would maybe deal another 6 on turn 5. That's only 12. Maybe they deal another 6 on turn 6. You're down to 2. Oh, shoot. Wait. It's turn 6. I'm down to 2. You're not dead yet. And turn 6 is pretty good for this deck. They're feeling good. They got the aggression. They're at full health, and boom. You drop Ghalta, and they're too slow again. There is the sometimes crazy draws, as there can be with any deck, where they get multiple Archlate Phoenixes on turn 3, possibly. And then they deal 6 damage turn 3. It is a pretty fast clock, but again, if it is perhaps only 6 on turn 3, then do another 6 on turn 4, turn 5, you're still not dead. Oftentimes, many times, I've been left with just a couple health. That's all I need. The opponent has tapped out because they have to. That's the whole point of the deck. They don't have counter spells left. Maybe they have 1 mana left. Doesn't matter. Chances are they aren't stopping me. And if they've tapped out, keep in mind that lightning axe, the fiery impulse that they would have used to stop my aggression, that can't happen. They could have won if they had held back just a little bit, but they can't because they got to cast enough, and you get the idea. It's not quite fast enough. Oftentimes it's not fast enough, and then boom. Especially it's not fast enough when you're doing something that wins on the spot. Not every time, but it stabilizes. It locks things up. You might play Ghalta, Vaultborn Tyrant, and Carnage Tyrant. You can't attack with any of them, but Vaultborn Tyrant has got you 3 life. Carnage Tyrant, triggering Vaultborn, gains you another 3, 6 in total. At the very least, you negated 6 damage, 1 swing from 2 Phoenixes, or they just get 1 out, they poke you a little bit, and all of a sudden you stabilize, and, well, they're not going to outrace that. It's over at that point. Maybe a Phoenix has tickled you twice, taking you down to 14, or maybe 11. Oh, shoot. Boom, you play Vaultborn, all of a sudden gaining 6. You go up to 17, and they're not winning that anymore. The next turn after you go to 17, I don't know, they get 3 more Phoenixes, would be 9 damage. Well, if they get all 4 Phoenixes, that's 12. But you're at 17. So you go down to 5, and you're still alive. And they still die. And they realize that because the Archlate Phoenix only has 2 toughness. You plow right through it. Solar Updraft, yes, I'm having fun. I'm doing the primer. Oof, oh my goodness. Again, anybody watching in the morning, perhaps you got to bed a little bit earlier and sooner than I am. So hopefully you got some good sleep. My goodness. Yeah, but I'd say we're kind of getting started. Maybe we'll end on 2 hours. Hard to say, but Archlate Phoenix, we covered that. It's good. Often enough, many times they don't kill you fast enough, and all their early interaction, again, like with any deck, it's not doing much, because how you make all that mana is based around lands, and that's pretty hard to interact with. Okay, the next one I feel good against. Let's go with Mono Black Waste Not, because I mentioned that in the land part in a couple times. Okay, wait, I have opened copies of this. Okay, good stuff. Oh, my mouse is moving. 1 second. Okay, Waste Not. A control deck based around gaining value from you discarding cards based on what you discard, with Thoughtseize, Duress, discarding a non-creature. They discard a non-creature, non-land card. It's rough. Sometimes you have a hand with just lands and just creatures, and that Duress is doing nothing. But it's painful, and whoever has faced off against this, you know how completely helpless you are. If you are splashing white, Leyline of Sanctity is the name of the game. If you give yourself hexproof, you're discarding not a whole lot, basically nothing. They have a few ways to still make you do it, but for the most part it's my favorite thing. However, I have continued to get wins without Leyline of Sanctity, so that's kind of what got me onto it, of maybe I can trim it, free up the sideboard space, and Extinction Event. That's what would have been Leyline of Sanctity. Now I have a fantastic option against Mono Green Devotion, and it's also in black, which I already was in for Culling Ritual, so an absolutely natural fit. But it's kind of like Izzet Phoenix, which we were just talking about there. I used to have a lot of graveyard hate. If the opponent can't get the Phoenix out of the graveyard, if you exile the Arclight Phoenixes, any number of things, that's good. That's good. But of course the opponent can't play around the graveyard hate, and they might absolutely expect that. But then I was thinking, oh, I just keep beating them up. I never need that graveyard hate. So I just cut it completely, and they think I'm going to do something, and I still don't, and I still beat them up. They prepare for something that is non-existent, just not happening, and it feels pretty darn good when they adapt their game plan. But however, the Leyline of Sanctity, stopping this, oh, it is lovely stuff. But I get the job done without it. So that's why I trimmed it. Oh man, it does the trick. You know, Thoughtseize, maybe it gets rid of Vaultborn Tyrranax Rex. They rip so much stuff, but you get there in a stable way. And you get to a point where you can make so much mana, anything you top deck, because you are in a top deck war. They've gotten rid of everything with Go Blank for 2 and a black, making you discard 2 cards. That sometimes is quite rough for Waste Not. They're making 2 zombies, maybe they have 2 Waste Nots. The opponent has gotten a little bit greedy. They want to do a setup to get the most value out of their discard spells, but if they do that, they're also potentially just a little bit too slow. Yeah, but it's not a problem. You set up with lands, they're not killing it, they're not sacrificing it. They might, again, with that Field of Ruin or Demolition Field that I mentioned, but they have to have it, and often enough they don't. So you're ready, you make the big mana, you get to be able to make 8, and any creature you top deck, you can play. Anything big, Vaultborn Tyrant especially, that has been the all-star many times. As the only creature I play, boom, gain 3 life, draw a card, the opponent uses removal, Liliana of the Veil, or Sheoldred's Edict, makes me sacrifice it. Then I make a token that's a copy, gaining 3 life again, drawing a card. Chances are with those card draws or my next draw for the turn I get something big. Maybe it is still sticking around when that big thing that I draw enters, and you get the idea. It just boom, outvalues, gets the job done often enough. But again, if it starts to be a problem, if it starts to be more common, because it has fallen by the wayside a little bit, I'll bring in that ley line, use it as well. You don't even have to have white for it, because you're aiming to have it in your opening hand. If you do, you start the game with it on the battlefield for free. Just lovely stuff. Sometimes it is also painful. You have a fantastic hand that doesn't include a ley line or something free that you could do. You want to keep it, but you also want to see that thing. So you have this dilemma. If you don't have Leyline of Sanctity at all, you never have to feel awkward about keeping something good that could be interrupted by the Thoughtseize. You know, chances are it's going to happen. Maybe it is so good. You have a great combination of lands, 1 Sunken, 1 Forest, and 1 Castle. Feels very nice. With a Sylvan and a Commune. You know, they go with Thoughtseize, they rip the Sylvan Scrying. They don't want you to grab anything specific, and then you go with Commune, which digs. Maybe it grabs the 2nd Sunken, and poof, all of a sudden, with the 2 Sunkens, the land, and Castle Garenbrig, you're making 7 mana. And now they're feeling pretty bad. They continue to discard a bunch of big creatures that you have. Maybe they do make the mistake, and this is also a good point. If the opponent is unfamiliar with the deck, as they probably are, they see the cheapest creature, Palani's Hatcher or Regisaur Alpha, they think that is what you're going to play on turn 4 or turn 5, so they get rid of it, when in reality you're going to be playing Carnage Tyrant before these things, again, because Castle Garenbrig, it's just 6 green. One of it cannot be red. That's sometimes how I've won before. They just automatically assume that's what's coming up next. Eventually, boom, it's gone, and then all of a sudden, Vaultborn Tyrant lands the following turn, when they thought Palani's Hatcher would, and now they're feeling pretty silly. Sometimes they scoop right away because they realize the terrible mistake that just happened. Sometimes Vaultborn Tyrant just draws so many incredible cards that the opponent has run out of gas, discard spells, and they can't get rid of all the stuff that I refilled, and boom, just goes up in smoke. Crash and burn. Should have timed that a little bit better, but nah, that's what you do, and that's what everybody does when you persevere through multiple thought seizes, hand hate, whatever stuff it is. But again, if it feels too bad, Leyline of Sanctity, you know the trick to get the job done, and boom, there you go. Mono Green Devotion, we talked about. What else should we talk about specifically? Nothing super common. Again, it is quite a wide range. In Explorer, the ranked ladder, best of 3, it's not the highest stakes environment, so people naturally will try out a bunch of different stuff, but you still face the common things often enough. I play it every day, so I usually run into them here and there. And over the weeks, the months, the years, I faced everything quite a bit. So even if I don't face it for a day or two, it's not a problem. I'm ready and waiting. I'm packing the heat. I know what I can do. I know I can get the job done, just like you guys might be able to get the job done. What other deck would I want to? Slick Shot Showoff, Gruul Aggro, or Mono Red Aggro. That, again, like I mentioned, aggro is rough. They do their thing. They win on turn 3 or turn 4. They're on the play, which is the worst thing that can happen against an aggro deck. Not fun. Sometimes you're setting up, you play your second Sunken, your third, you're kind of ready to pop off, and they do just enough. They take you down to just 0, maybe -1. If you had been on the play, you won't always be, but if you had been on the play, they would have been 1 turn behind, and that's all you need. But speaking of the sweepers, Culling Ritual specifically against aggro decks like the Slick Shot Showoff and whatnot, Paradise Druid, or something else for 2, something that can get you to 4 mana on turn 3, that can get you that source of black for the sweeper, or whatever it is that is going to help you against the aggro. That's maybe all it takes. I didn't always have Paradise Druid, and I wasn't always potentially able to make 4 on turn 3. I was waiting until turn 4 to make 4, and oftentimes that is just a touch too slow, as has happened recently, so that is sort of the inspiration as well to go with Paradise Druid. I was left at 1 or -1, -2. If only I had swept the previous turn, I would have won, guaranteed. I had all this big stuff, as you guys know. Boom, the things would have dropped. The opponent would have been feeling pretty bad. And again, with Culling Ritual, even if you destroy 3 non-land permanents, that might be the 3 green for Archdruids, which will grab and put out a land, or Ghalta, if you know you're able to make 8 on the following turn. Any number of things. Maybe you grab Vaultborn Tyrant. You want to stabilize, you want to have a good blocker, gain some life, because you are still pretty low. You just got there. You survived with a couple life, and boom, all of a sudden their chances go up in smoke. They only have a creature without flying. You took out that Slick Shot Showoff. And again, Culling Ritual, it does not target creatures specifically. With the Gruul aggro matchup, they sometimes have Blossoming Defense, 1 green to give +2/+2, and hexproof. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big the creatures are, the little creatures are. They're gone. You could have a sweeper that deals 3 damage, 4 damage to each creature, but often enough, not just against Gruul aggro, mono white humans. They have whatchamacallit, name's on the tip of my tongue. Thalia's Lieutenant, yes, okay. Thalia's Lieutenant. For 1 and a white, when it enters, they put a 1/1 counter on each human they control. Very nasty stuff. Or they double it up. Things get big. That's what I'm talking about. Those little creatures get big. They get to 3 toughness, 4 toughness, maybe 5. They have a pretty nice turn. You survive even through that nasty aggression to 1 or 2. Culling Ritual. Poof. Done. You make so much mana, maybe, with all those 1/1 human tokens or 2/2s, however many counters I've put on. Doesn't matter how big they are. Done. Gone. They could have protection, depending what lists are running what, but for the most part, that can be quite nice. Lovely, lovely stuff. That covers aggro, feels very good against, well, it doesn't feel very, very good, but it feels a lot better with this. All aggro stuff, boom. All small stuff, boom. Extinction Event. Stuff with odd mana values, or even mono green or vampires. Izzet Phoenix, I don't have to do anything different. Feels good. Pick your poison for the odd artifacts or enchantments or creatures with flying. Possibly could be 5-color Niv Mizzet, Beam to Light, which we don't have Bring to Light yet. In Explorer, we will be getting that shortly, I would imagine, in the next couple months, hopefully. It's a sorcery spell. Might be instant speed, but anyways, Converge. You pay 3, a green and a blue, based on the total colors of mana you use to cast it. You search your library for a spell. I'm pretty sure it's just any spell, and you get to cast it. So if you spend 1 of each color on that, it costs a total of 5. You have to at least put a blue and a green, but that deck is based around all 5 colors. So you sink all 5 into it. You search your library for a spell with a mana value 5 or less. You put it onto the battlefield. That might be Niv Mizzet itself, which would draw a bunch of cards, depending what version of Niv Mizzet it is. We have quite a few at this point. Yeah, pretty lovely stuff, but you get the idea. Big flying creature or Atraxa, if it is some sort of deck that is trying to cheat that fantastic creature out when it enters. Well, they put a bunch of stuff in their hand. It's not much of a problem. Chances are it's not doing a whole lot against you. It might be single target removal. Who cares about that? Again, like Izzet Phoenix, single target removal is not doing a whole lot when you drop a whole lot. Yeah. So yeah, pick your poison. Big flying creature, not much of a problem. And maybe if you feel really bad against Rakdos vampires, you bring in pick your poison plus Extinction Events. Of course, it could weaken the overall game plan, and you don't want to do that too much. So that's why I like to keep it simple. The 4 of Extinction Event, boom, for this specific thing. You trim Paradise Druid potentially, or, well, also Culling Ritual. If you have other non-land permanents above and beyond Paradise Druid, that could be nice. You're using Paradise Druid to potentially make your source of black for Culling Ritual, but then it's also destroyed. So you get a temporary mana back from losing this, which could make all the difference. Destroying a bunch of stuff on the opponent's side, plus 1, maybe 2 things on yours, means you get to 8. Or even if it is just 7, that's lovely. You swept the opponent, you played a big thing, and now they're wondering, how the heck am I going to recover from this? So yeah, all small stuff, that is a lot of stuff. Extinction Event for hard to target stuff or odd or even stuff. And they're quite simple, straightforward. I like to keep things simple. I like to keep things consistent because consistency is king. And this is very, very consistent. It's taken a little bit to get here. I've tried so many different angles, big creatures, things that grab lands, creatures that grab lands when they enter. Chances are you're thinking, hey, why have you tried this? Have you tried that? I'm pretty sure I've tried it, but of course I am always open to suggestions. If I get better, that's fine by me. Even if it's coming from me or from you, better is better. And dinosaurs have gotten better. Whatever variation you choose to play, yeah, I think we'll leave it there for now. Almost 2 hours, just straight up talking about it. Hopefully you guys appreciated that. Take a big bite out of the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And wish me luck. Wish me luck with these chapters. My oh my. Okay. And the countdown as well. Actually, maybe I'll play some more clips. What's my favorite one? Oh, this.
Good Lord, what is happening in there?
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic. This is,
Ruthless aggression.
What do you mean you've seen this? It's brand new.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. You're going to see Ruthless Aggression a lot more if you stick around, and many other things. So, peace. Have a good one. Have a good rest of your time zone. Get some good rest wherever it is, whenever it is, and see you next time. I'm going to get that explosion. I got to get it right. I spent 2 hours talking about dinosaurs. This is going to be timed perfectly. Perfectly.